Why don't you give me a sign?
This is Corinna Jane.
The leaves are trailing on that shore. It's not your problem, it's mine.
With her brand new single, Give Me a Sign.
While the world still spins,
As featured on BBC Introducing.
it's just the way it's gotta be. Give me a sign about the things that we don't know. Why don't you give me a sign?
Corinna Jane, Give Me a Sign. Out now.
It's not your problem, it's mine.
Come on a white-knuckle ride to the dark heart of the financial system with filmmaker and artist duo Dan Edelstyn and Hilary Powell as they buy up and then blow up £1.2 million worth of high-interest debt.
Hello, I'm Sophia Jessica, and welcome to the Fan Carpet.
So it's wonderful to speak to you today, Daniel. How are you today?
Good, thanks. Yeah, very good. And you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Had a nice day out yesterday, and yeah, it's all going really well.
Oh, that's. I'm pleased to hear it. Yeah, where are you speaking from?
West London.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm local.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so yes, I'm just trying to find your is it a blog?
Yeah, it's a film website. It's been running for 17 years.
Oh my God! Wow. Okay. Well, sorry, I haven't found it yet, but I will.
That's okay. No
check
problem.
it out. I just don't. Weirdly, like I don't really read film stuff. The only person that reads anything film related in our household is my son, George,
Right.
who is 8 and is obsessed with filmmaking. I just do it like I read a lot of film books when I was starting to make films. Like I think I can't remember what the books were, but all sorts of books at the time. But I tell you, my obsession is about screenwriting and the hero's journey and everything. I get obsessed with that, but I just don't. I just realized that I do not keep up with contemporary filmmaking of any kind, basically, which is awful, and I wish I did. But maybe it's for the best too. Maybe it's like a chef or something that just doesn't cook when they're at home or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like you just,
Yeah.
you just sort of, it becomes part of like, well, it feels to me anyway, that one's take on filmmaking becomes so deeply entrenched in the way you think that I don't know that for me when I want to turn off at night. Mm-hmm. I watch horror. No, not horror. I watch like dark crime dramas. It's the only thing that I can watch.
Okay.
And when I'm reading newspapers or blogs, it's always connected to politics, pretty much, or economics. So I'm more of a nerd about the subjects that I study than I am about the process of filmmaking. So I apologize that I haven't read your blog.
No problem at all. No problem.
I promise
at all.
it's not me being like a supercilious twat. I promise.
No, absolutely not. It's fine.
I can try
absolutely
and be one.
It's all good.
Yeah, different ways.
It really is all good. Yeah, it's all good, my friend. So if we go back to the beginning, was there a defining moment for you to get into the entertainment industry?
Ooh. Entertainment industry. Wow. Well, yes, maybe there was. I don't think I wanted to be in the entertainment industry actually necessarily. When I was, I guess, when I was a child, all the reports of all the terrible things around the world, the news reports and everything, used to obsess me. Couldn't believe there was people dying in Africa. All the different diseases and everything, and and I used to worry about everyone in the world all the time and couldn't understand why they couldn't just sort the damn thing out, but I was always told that was a childish way to view the world, but I always thought, well, we could do something, we must be able to do something. So really, like, I wanted to be, I think, a writer and a journalist at first, because I had this idea that somehow I could tell a story that would open people's minds to change, you know. So it was very like that. It's so basic, you know. It's such a basic response to the world, you know, the worries and concerns. My mum was a psychologist, and she was trying to help the world. My dad was a doctor, pioneering chemotherapy specialist, who died very young, and he was also it felt like he was a mission, you know, had a mission to try and help people, you know. So I was brought up kind of in that context. But my mum always used to tell me stories, you know, around my dad and around my grandparents and everything. So I got interested in storytelling, and somehow the two things melded together, of like storytelling on the one hand and trying to help on the other. It was those two things. And then photography became an obsession when I was a teenager. I was taking everyone's photo, and I got a darkroom in my bedroom, and you know, I didn't know how to write. I don't think. I was very worried about structure. You know, I was always like, what structure? What structure? Oh my God, I don't understand structure, so I can't write. So I just take photos of people, you know, and so I wanted to be a photojournalist was my first thing. But then I became so worried about not knowing what structure was that I decided that I was going to try and become a journalist. And to overcome my lack of knowing how to write, I tried to become a writer. So I managed to get a job writing for Time Out Paris, because when I was studying history at UCL, and I did a year in the Sorbonne. So I got a job writing film reviews for Time Out Paris, and that triggered my interest in films. Before then, I'd never really noticed films. It was just that. And then so then I was like, then I thought, well, if I'm gonna like write about films, I need to find out about films, you know. So then I spent lots and lots of time in those little repertory cinemas on the left bank in Paris. You know, they just had like back-to-back like showings of Godard and Truffaut, and then that was like the beginning of, oh my God, the new wave, you know, and like all of that. So then I wanted to become a filmmaker, you know, and then I used to leave those cinemas, like I have a pack of gitans in my pocket and smoke them back to back and drink black coffee and get in romantic situations and, you know, all the rest of it. So that was when I studied learned about filmmaking, and then I decided actually maybe I can meld in the interest that I have of like story forms and writing and photography all into filmmaking. So that was that was such a long, unwieldy answer.
Great, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what was it in particular about the bank job that inspired you to create it?
It was not necessarily like, it was reading this book Creditocracy, which you could see in the beginning of Bank Job. I'm kind of reading this book, and it was a book that you know, like sometimes when you read things or probably watch things for you, because you obviously love filmmaking, how you feel that things have changed in a way that they can never go back to before you've read the thing. Well, Creditocracy for me was a case in point. It was like, I've just learned that you know, banks are effectively, or creditors are stripping away the processes of democracy, you know, and the welfare systems in the Western world, and they're turning us all into debt slaves, you know, and I've now learned the mechanics of the system that they're doing. So now I have to try and make everyone aware of it, you know, using the tool of film, you know. And then it was from there, the process was like, okay, so how do we create a structure, you know, which is useful and which is inviting of people to learn about it, you know, eventually that became the heist genre, you know. But it took a long time before we came up with like doing it as a heist. At first, I wanted to do it as like a sort of superhero detonator character who wore a cape and was like, filmmaker goes into debt to save the world from debt. But, you know, the problem was that I pitched and no one wanted a story about debt, actually, or certainly not a superhero that goes into debt. But when we came out with the idea of it being about money and printing money, then it began to capture people's imaginations in a way that it hadn't previously, because people like that sort of fantasy of like, what if I could print out as much money as I wanted, you know? And then it also became this community activity as well, which gave it a lot more potency than just a filmmaker who decides to save the world, you know, a white privileged filmmaker, you know, deciding to sacrifice himself on behalf of everyone, which, you know, let's face it, reminds me of the missionaries in Africa and all the problems around that way of thinking. So when it became not just about my story, but it became a lot wider, it gathered potency, you know, and it kind of exploded as a concept. But, you know, it was all trial and error.
Right. That's awesome. You set the film in Walthamstow. Was there, what was it about this area that drove you to it?
Well, it's where we live. And at first, the question in the film was like, is Britain a creditocracy? It's such a big question that then we decided to just like, you know, we could be traveling up and down the country all the time, speaking to different people in different places. So the question was like, how do we minimize, you know, how do we put like enough of a kind of fence around this that it's doable and that it's followable, you know? And geography then became much more, so we could say, rather than is Britain a creditocracy, is Walthamstow a creditocracy? And it brings it a lot smaller and means that the field of inquiry, because it's narrower, it's an awful lot easier to do. And then we can begin to build a community in the area where we live, which of course is much easier to access. And also we then have the second question: if Walthamstow is a creditocracy, what do we do about it? You know, that's the second question, which then gives rise to all sorts of community action, which reminds me of Passport to Pimlico in a way. You know, those Ealing comedies, you know, from because I also make music, and my music partner, his grandfather was an escaped Jewish, you know, filmmaker from Nazi Germany, you know, who became the director of Passport to Pimlico, weirdly, you know, and lived this crazy life. And in the after he'd made that film, he lived in a commune in the 50s where they all took acid, and unfortunately everything fell apart, you know. But anyway, but I sometimes feel like Bank Job is like a little bit like those Ealing comedies, you know. It's got that kind of like this really strong sense of a community coming together and you know, forming a collective identity and a response to problems, you know, which we're trying to build in the next project as well.
Yeah, awesome. Now, this is your second film. Were there any lessons that you learned that you brought into Bank Job?
Well, I knew it was going to be a nightmare because I'd done it once before. I knew it was a thankless task. So I wasn't going to be beaten down by the sheer scale of the challenge. I think like the other film was like, yeah, maybe the other film, a lot of it took place in Ukraine, and I knew how difficult and expensive it was to access Ukraine every time I needed to get there. So maybe that made me want to say, let's set this field of inquiry closer to home so it's a lot easier to keep shooting there. And I guess I also just felt like from the first one that the bigger you dream and the more precise you can be about the thing, the mission, you know, in other words, we want to blow up £1 million of debt and that's our goal. And in the first one, it was like, we want to set up a vodka brand and import vodka from a place, you know, it hadn't started out as that. But I already knew that we needed something concrete, you know, like in any fiction film, you know, you've got your MacGuffin. We needed a MacGuffin, like a clear thing. We don't just want to like make a film saying, oh, aren't banks bad? You know, because there's enough of those kind of things around. We want to have a clear narrative trajectory, you know, and something that can either succeed or fail, but which has clear milestones on the way. And then I suppose the final thing is about emotional storytelling. You know, we don't just want a whole series of events happening. We want them to mean something emotional, you know, as it goes through. So I got clear. Actually, that's something that I got clearer on as we went through Bank Job, because I've been fumbling around in the dark with that, like, you know, before then.
Right, that's great. Yeah, and you're always evolving as a filmmaker as you go along. So there are obviously explosive goings on the set, but do you have any memorable moments from the set that will stick with you throughout your career?
Oh, when you say from the set, are you talking about the literal explosion moment, or are you talking about just the
Well,
whole
I
thing?
mean that's quite. I mean that's that's an interesting one. But like, do you like that was a memorable moment in the film? But do you personally have any memorable moments that stick with you?
Um, well, I mean, I have to go around that explosion. That was the biggest nightmare, was organizing that explosion. You know, we suddenly had like layers of establishment trying to stop us, you know, and you could see that there was like a little call, like there was one moment where I was on a call with someone and we were talking about it, but literally like the feeling that I had, we'd sold like probably about 300 or 400 like kind of bond certificates, which were worth about 20 or 30,000 pounds of income for us at that point, which was an enormous amount of income for documentary filmmakers to be in charge of. And we promised, or we'd certainly tried to offer anyone that bought a bond, no matter what price they paid, whether it was £10 or 1,000, a ticket to come to the explosion. All of a sudden we were being told by the police and the City of London that this was impossible. We were selling tickets to a radical event. You know, it wasn't filmmaking, it was activism. You know, we were being tried to, you know, they were really trying to shut us down. And we were really lucky at that moment because that was when we signed a contract with the BFI. So they couldn't really say that we weren't filmmakers because the BFI doesn't get involved with you know, activist projects. They are, you know, so that helped. And then we had to also write an essay almost arguing that, you know, you cannot remove political critiques necessarily from the documentary. The two things are not mutually exclusive, you know. So we were like literally writing sort of film theory to police people. So it was a little bit absurd, you know, and quite memorable. But a big nightmare, you know, and it didn't turn my hair grey because, as you can see, I'm still blonde.
Yeah.
But it felt like it was going to turn my hair not only grey, but then it was going to make my hair fall out. You know, I was so stressed out. You know, but you know, I had kind of like the establishment on one side, and Hilary just determined that it had to be there in the city on the other, and the two forces were kind of pushing against me in either direction. You know, and one side was clearly going to win, and I was just stuck in the middle as the person organizing it. But Hilary was like, "Oh, I'm going to win," you know, and she just would not let. And I, of course, couldn't give way while Hilary was like, she's got a really strong metal, you know, so I had to yield to, and so she kind of thrashed the city, you know. So it all worked out. But yeah, that's something that I will always remember as like the most stressful thing I've ever had to organize. And often actually weirdly the more stressful a thing is to do, probably the more worth it sometimes it is, you know, because you're really standing up and going over the parapet, you know, and of course you don't want to, and it's way outside your comfort zone. And I would much prefer to be having a cup of tea and putting my feet up and watching something, you know, crime drama or whatever. But you know, occasionally you have to do these things.
Cool. So, I mean, you mentioned crime dramas before, but do you have a preferred genre in any favorite films and TV?
Well, on TV, do you say, or in?
Yeah, favorite films or TV.
Okay, favorite films. Yeah, for atmosphere, I've always loved Pi. You know, the Darren Aronofsky movie.
Oh yeah.
I love the high contrast vibe, and I like the kind of the world that he created in that movie. And I also like the fact of how he made it on such a shoestring, and yet it's such an amazing accomplishment. I also love early Woody Allen. I know I'm not really supposed to say that because Hilary hates him now in light of all that's kind of come out. But you know, I guess there's a kind of whinging quality to that, but I also like the kind of like the never-ending anxiety, you know, that he has, and the fact that he's able to articulate it so clearly, kind of like revealing his own neuroses. And I like the fact that the films actually, weirdly, they don't have like explosions and all the rest of it. I like that kind of art house vibe of those films. But you know what? Like I said to you earlier on, I don't really watch that many films right now because of like I've got relatively young children, and you know, so I do tend to watch box sets late at night with Hilary on Netflix and Now TV and stuff. And yeah, so right now I'm enjoying watching oh my god, Mayor of Eastwick. Is that something? Is that a thing?
Mayor of
I like
Easttown.
that.
Easttown with Kate Winslet.
Yeah. I'm quite enjoying that. I don't like things that don't feel plausible. Like I watched something on Netflix. It was a French thing about a guy who was meant to be like a mastermind kind of thief. I can't remember the name of it, but Hilary really liked it. What was it?
Is that Lupin?
Yeah. I found it really irritating because it kept seeming that like there kept being these really implausible things, you know, which just threw me out of the storytelling and made me just kind of despise the structure. Whereas I really liked the actor, you know, and I felt like if it could just be a bit more real, you know. So I think I'm in love with the documentary, gritty reality inside those films, and I like them to be quite true, you know, in a way. And I don't really, I find myself turning off with these fantasy type of like sci-fi things as soon as things start floating around in the world or you know, coming down. Oh God, here we go. So yeah, so does that help? That's kind of what I hate and what I like.
Yeah, that's great. So is documentary filmmaking where you want to stay as a filmmaker?
That's a great question. Not forever. Maybe for the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years. I would really like. I'm becoming much more interested in fiction. I think I've always had an interest in it, and there always have been fictional parts inside the films that we've made. But I'd never really felt that I understood how to put like fiction together in a way that was really compelling and honest necessarily. You know, going back to that fear of structure, you know, that I've had. But now I'm beginning to feel as if I'm getting a little bit like that I could hazard another go at it, you know. But that's as far as I've got. I haven't sort of like started hammering down something that's definite yet on that. And right now, because we're doing this new project called Power, it's massive. It's going to be massive for us. It's going to be a major commitment. So it's quite hard to think of, because anything filmmaking wise is a major commitment. So it's hard to think of actually taking a fictional idea and making it real in the real world until we finish this next one. Yeah,
awesome. I look forward to Power. So who inspires you in the industry?
Ooh. Well, Agnes Varda did. I think she died a year or two ago. God, that's such a good question. Oh my God, I don't know who inspires me. I liked the Yes Men before. I used to, you know, I quite like them. I don't know who made Beasts of the Southern Wild. Me and Hill watched that recently. I really loved that film. We found it, I think it was on Netflix or somewhere. I don't know who directed it. It was so beautiful. It was a fiction, but it had such a sense of reality about it. And I think it was really kind of almost like a hybrid because I think it was about a real place and real people. And a lot of the actors, I think, were quite real, you know, not non-actors. So emotionally powerful. My heroes in the industry. This reveals my level of appalling lack of knowledge because I cannot even really think of any concrete people to throw at you. I'm really, really sorry. I don't know their names or anything. Alison, I can still see your face, by the way. You're like going, ah! But it's fine, you know. But at least I'm being honest, you know. So and there you go. So if you could just look up the name of the director of that and just put that in for me, that would be great. Of the Beast of the Southern Wild.
But great film. We actually did that premiere at the London Film Festival a few years back.
Oh, that's great.
Spoke to a little boy in there. It was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I need to brush up a bit on my movies. You know, if you need any film reviews, ask me. I'll do a couple. That might help me. I just never have a cause for doing it. You know, like being. You know, I should. I spoke to someone. I did a podcast with someone yesterday. I should have told you, Alison. I did a podcast with someone who got in touch directly, and she literally just goes to all the film festivals and does like just loads and loads and loads of interviews. Just because we had a PR guy in Hot Docs who's fed that one through, and her film knowledge is massive. It must be. I'm sure it's like yours, Marc. You know, it's because you know you're literally just like swimming in filmmaking. You know, which is amazing. But yeah, I'm literally just swimming in like social theories and stuff. If you ask me more about what writers do you like, what economists do you like and stuff, I'd be much clearer. So you can see that really, like I come from a perspective of like, what's the problem? How do I resolve it using film? I don't come from the perspective of look at all these different filmmakers and how do I fit in. That doesn't even come into my mind.
Right. Okay, cool. So just finally, before I let you go, what are you hoping audience will take away from the bank job when they get to see it?
I hope that they learn about how the economy is structured. I hope emotionally speaking that they realize that when people come together, they can do amazing things and that they can bypass power structures and that they're not so trapped as they necessarily think. And I hope it really reveals how the money system works, and also the hypocrisy, the sheer scale of hypocrisy around debt. When you have the people at the top whose debts are continually negotiated or written off, but the people at the bottom who are forced into either bankruptcy or you know mental health issues because they can't pay very small bills, you know. So I hope it makes people angry and willing to take the next step towards action.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, it's been wonderful to speak to you, Daniel. I look forward to the next project, Powell, when that comes out, and hopefully get to speak to you again for that.
Yeah, I really hope so. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And sorry I was late.
No problem at all.
Thank you for watching The Fan Carpet. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for more content next time.
Expect explosions, community, and active hope. Bank Job, coming to all good independent cinemas soon.
I'm here on the largest of the Balearic Islands, Mallorca. With the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean Sea, beautiful mountainous landscape, the thriving city of Palma, quaint little market towns, a growing number of luxury hotels, it's no surprise that the likes of Audrey Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor like to holiday here. So come and join me as I take you round Mallorca.
Thank you for watching The Fan Carpet. If you like this video, be sure to click that thumbs up button at the bottom of your screen. And also be sure to subscribe to the Fan Carpet YouTube channels. They're absolutely free and so much fun too. Be sure to check out the official website, thefancarpet.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date with reviews, competitions, the latest news, and so much more.